Tara is quite a revolutionary, I would say. She started as well, I'll read some of her bio. She was on the faculty of Cornell Medical College. She maintains a private practice in New York. She treats mental illness such as eating disorders. She's also now developed, even though she was such an intense clinician, I don't think that was enough for her, so no, and then she worked at Cornell. She developed her own programs in eating disorders. She has a great book on eating disorders, well, the few that actually work for people, that young women come to her, and she's not treating them as much clinically as she is from her personal experience and the love she has for these women, because she sees herself over there in those young women's place, and she knows how to get into that psychology. But with all that work and her own inner work, she developed a way of transcending her ego-based mind, and she started to have these awakened experiences. And for the last year, Tara and I have been doing something called the Consciousness Club, where people come together and talk about their conscious awakening experiences. So with all this clinical work, she's now going off into a place that doesn't quite fit into the clinical setting, but she is doing it anyway, and she's developing protocols for transcending ego. And she has this thing she's put together called the ego personality test, where she goes in and sees, sort of like what Bruce was doing, what's your blocks, what's in the way, why are you not getting what you want, what is it about your ego that's stopping your divine personage from attaining its rightful place in the universe, its rightful place of divinity and bliss. So this is her latest work with the personality ego test. And when she's done this with herself, she's gone, if you don't mind me saying, bliss states. She's achieving high Kundalini Samadhi states of consciousness, but just by going in and doing the work she's done. So Tara, it's your stage, and thank you for being here and trusting the process. So what do you want to share tonight with us?
Thank you, Alan. Alan has become such a good friend. And so he knows my kind of private process and what's happened. So it's really interesting. It was a really interesting introduction for me to hear because I kind of have segmented my clinical work in one area and my consciousness work in another area. And I do keep my practice separate, but I'll fill in some of the blanks here regarding the story. So I started developing this method to get in touch with my own loving awareness at a time where I was atheist, really a hard, cold academic. And I just didn't really believe anything else was out there. I didn't believe in anything outside of myself, really, or my ego, I should say. And at the same time, I intuitively felt called to these loving awareness meditations and meta meditations. And so I use the techniques that I developed to help people get out of ego, which is kind of an interesting skill set for a psychologist to have, because sidebar, a lot of people go into therapy wanting to address issues like anxiety and depression that the ego doesn't really like. I mean, or the people don't really like. It's uncomfortable to have depression. It's uncomfortable to have anxiety. But when a person has an eating disorder, they don't necessarily present as wanting to get over the eating disorder. They present as wanting to lose weight, which is in line with the ego. So I had to think outside of the box in terms of interventions to get people to let go of their ego. So again, I started thinking about my own ego and how I could move just towards loving awareness. And I started having these spontaneous mystical experiences. And I had absolutely no idea what to make of them. And I didn't necessarily connect them to the method. So I want to come out of the mystical closet even more now and talk about a little bit about how I met Alan and why I personally know that he is a visionary in terms of being able to identify work before it's even out there like Bruce's, because I was sitting at a table at a restaurant, totally kind of minding my own business at a conference called TCCHE, which is amazing, by the way. And I'm doing some work there with them now on this method. And Alan came running out of the back room. I think he was probably eating dinner with Bruce. And he stopped with his back to me and he whipped around and he looked at me and he sat down in the chair next to me and he said, you know, when people have experiences at higher states of consciousness, other beings notice. What happened to you? I had no idea who he was. And I said to him, well, if you're asking me a question like that, I think you already know. And so he went into describing my experiences and anyhow. So then he said, well, you know, you should start teaching this. And he's been really encouraging me to kind of get out and talk about this method that really I developed for myself. And now with Alan's encouragement, I'm sharing it with all of you. So that's a little bit of the fun backstory there. Would you like to hear a bit about the method itself?
Yeah, but you know, one thing, Tara, I think is that moment of forgiveness where you had to really go in. That was a transformative moment. If you don't mind me adding to your story, you want to just,
Alan knows my whole entire personal history, so he could just draw from it here. So what had happened in that initial ego transcendent meditation that I had done without even knowing what I was doing was that I went back in time and experienced myself through the consciousness of someone that I had felt had wronged me or had victimized me. And seeing myself through their perspective, I completely forgave the abuse, we'll say, because I understood why it all happened. And what I experienced later that day was not in the meditation. It was hours after the meditation. I had an experience where I went into this white void surrounded by light. And I think it was because when a person forgives, I think that they're repairing a tear in the fabric of the collective consciousness or an ego block in the fabric of the collective consciousness. So our ego, which I define as psychological protection against fear, it distances us between us and another person. We other another person when they've hurt us in some way. And so I think when we merge consciousness with people that have victimized us, or we can experience with our consciousness what it's like to be in their consciousness, that egoic block kind of evaporates, and we become one from the separateness. So I do think that forgiveness is kind of the capstone of an ego transcendent method, because again, that's where our biggest egoic blocks are. So the method that I developed, though, I was practicing with some fidelity for years prior to myself building up to this forgiveness meditation and then having these more mystical experiences. So there are a few, we'll say, foundational steps that one would need to get to, I think, before jumping right into forgiveness after experiencing trauma and living with a degree of fear. So I think that you're probably all sensing a pattern here in my thinking, which is like, first we need to make sure we really get to the therapy for things that need therapy, and then we can also build upon that spiritually and make sure that we're really doing this both together. At least for me in my own experience, that's what allowed me to remain in, we'll say, these more blissful states for extended periods of time, and make me, and I feel much more solid having worked kind of at all of the various levels of consciousness. If you're familiar with David Hawkins' work, from the lower levels of consciousness where we're really mired in fear and ego in the 3D, and then also moving up the scale of consciousness towards engaging in what I call higher consciousness service. So serving from the seat of loving awareness and tying it all together. I don't think that we can skip any steps. I think that we need to go through all of them. So should I go through them,
yes,
Alan?
yes, yes, go through them so people can, you want people to take the personality ego test, or, I mean, what do you want to do?
So that's a great question, Alan. So I've developed this 3-step method. The first step is insight. And there are various lessons that go along with insight. And one of the main lessons or experiences, we'll say, is taking what I call the ego personality test. So it's pretty extensive because our modern egos are pretty extensive, aren't they? So the test is very extensive as well. So I think what we can maybe do is do a little bit of an overview. But if people are interested in taking that ego personality test, they can go to my website, which is stepintohigherconsciousness.com. Contact me and I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, let's just go over it briefly. So, yes.
Oh, thank you. Yep. So that's my website. Thank you, Scott, for sharing. And if you just go to the contact tab, send me a message, and within a couple days, I'll send it to you, and we can get to know each other. Thank you, Scott, for that.
And let's go a little slower because we have a lot of people watching on Facebook and YouTube. So I want to read to them what the website is. The website is stepintohigherconsciousness.com. Stepintohigherconsciousness.com. And then on the tabs here, I've clicked contact, but here are the 3 steps that she was talking about. And Tara, I know that you wanted to lead a meditation, which we were excited about. So question for you, do you want to lead it now, or would you like to lead it towards the end of the program to kind of, complete? What feels more in alignment for you?
Sure. I think it probably makes the most sense for me to do it here at the end of this segment, only because the meditation itself builds on the first 2 steps. So it probably makes sense to do it now.
Okay, great. So I'm turning it over to you to take our audience on a journey.
Sure. So just a little bit more background. And Scott, how much time do we have here? Because I think
Well, we're already over.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, all right. So let's
yeah.
do meditation. All right, thank you, Scott. So, okay. So essentially, after a person takes this ego personality test and discovers where their egoic ideals are, they can program the mind into having and upholding higher consciousness ideals and taking conscious action that is in line actually not in line with the ego and in line with higher consciousness ideals. So instead of making specialized egoic meditations or ego transcendent meditations for everyone, what we could do is a stock one that kind of hits on some of the big modern egoic blocks, which would be thinness and, for instance, fame and wealth, these kinds of things. So you can get a flavor for what this meditation is. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, so taking a moment just to drop in.
Original sound.
Thank you. I'm going to ring the bowl 3 times here to start and twice to end. All right, let's begin. Bringing your attention to your breath. Noticing your inhales and your exhales. Stepping into the seat of awareness. In this meditation, you're invited to rewire the programming of your consciousness towards higher awareness. Moving into setting intentions. We do this practice for the benefit and welfare of all beings and all life everywhere, including our own. May we know the peace of living skillfully and with awareness of our ego. May we know the liberating freedom of non-attachment to outcome. May we know the love that arises from being of service, rooted in higher consciousness. And may we all be compassionate, peaceful, and free. You are not what your ego tells you that you are. You are loving awareness. You are not what others think of you. You exist independently from the thoughts of others. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. You are not your achievements. You are the driver behind those achievements. You are not the roles you play in this life. You are the actor playing the role. You are not your body. You are in and around your body. And you are not what you think you are worth, whether it be a little or a lot. You transcend worth. Moving into deprogramming the ego ideals. Your worth is not measured by the size, shape, and weight of your body, how much money you have, nor how many people like you. Here you are invited to explore whether the following higher consciousness ideals are in line with your true nature. And if so, programming them into your consciousness, setting them as a course for your actions to follow. Lovingly nourishing your body while accepting the way that it looks. Creating value through meaningful work and being a compassionate steward of resources. Respecting others while being your authentic self, regardless of whether or not people like you. If these are resonant with you, you're invited to commit to taking the following conscious actions, such as allowing yourself unconditional permission to nourish your body when it's hungry, stop eating when it's full, and exercise in such a way that's aimed at fostering health rather than changing the way the body looks. Committing to continue to help others with your work and resources, and expressing your honest opinion and needs in interpersonal relationships at the risk of being abandoned, rejected, disliked, or feeling discomfort. Remember that you are loving awareness. You are loving awareness. Taking a moment now to offer gratitude to yourself for this practice. Carrying the intention to do this for the benefit and welfare of all beings and all life everywhere, including your own. Commit to taking this new programming with you in your waking everyday life. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.
Sorry, that's really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
I really appreciate how you are helping us to focus on the bigger picture, like exercising for our well-being, and not just for changing the way, we look, as an example. And I heard that theme many times in both your talk and in your meditation, really making the truly loving choice, making choices that are rooted in what would love do for our body, for our health, for our well-being. And I also want to riff on that beautiful thought that forgiveness helps to heal a tear that's in the fabric of our consciousness. That is a beautiful, I've never heard it described that way, and it really stuck with me. So I just wanted to thank you for your beautiful words of wisdom.